Hi, this is the second chapter of Eventually I'd Have to Disappear, a podcast on the traces we leave behind as artists and how to work with them ethically, philosophically, artistically. I'd like to think out loud about something to kick off this chapter. I'm making this podcast for a mainly ArtEZ audience. You could say that this is like preaching to the choir, and not a very radical action. Then I read something Dan Savage, a writer, journalist and activist, wrote about this. Preaching to the choir actually arms the choir with arguments and elevates the choir's discourse. There's a reason the right does it and does it well and triumphs. I like to think of the archive as living history. In the archive, in this system, both personal and collective knowledge and experience is saved. This makes its way into our lives, our daily routines, our thoughts and feelings. Therefore, it's not just history, it is the past that shapes our present and our future. This chapter's guest, performance artist Anna Schlooz.
And I'm starting out here with documentation because documentation is kind of the backbone for the archival materials, and we can use a lot of names for that within contemporary art. We can call it resonances, traces, fragmentations, echoes, representations of something that is then captured in a certain form.
You just heard Tina Madsen, a professor who will be giving her insights and knowledge on the archive to this chapter as well in the form of intermezzos. Okay, it's running. So I'm sitting here with Anna Schlooz under some sort of blanket in this kind of tent we built to make the sound as good as possible. I met with Anna on October 27 in her home in Ghent. We studied together and I know her as someone who is always exploring, looking for, in her own words, new territory where there aren't any rules yet. One of the reasons I wanted to talk to her was the project she did in Rotterdam, a while back with her then roommates, who both studied fine arts. Together they did research and experiments around the theme of footprints and what you leave behind. Right before the presentation, they showed a bit of their working process by putting some of the outcome up in the garden. Anna elaborates on this.
Yeah, so one of the things we did during the process was that we are keeping trace of our footsteps, but like literally. So we printed out a lot of maps of Rotterdam, and all the different ways we went on the day we drew on that map. So we had a lot of drawings, I think from 1 or 2 months, and we were with 3, so that's like 90 drawings of our footprints. Nice. So where we went. And sometimes it was 5 days in a row the same print. Because I went in all the same ways every day. And sometimes it was really different because I went with the train to, Arnhem. So it was, the trace got out of the paper. Because it was only a map of Rotterdam. Because that's also what because we lived there. So we won't just focus on that place. Yeah. And it was really nice to be doing because I was realizing while doing it that I was always taking the same route or always moving in the same way. So I wanted to have another drawing actually. And because I wanted another drawing, I went in a different way. So that was a really crazy way of thinking, but I really liked it because it got me away from what I usually do.
Yeah. Nice.
So and also my roommates were like, I'm taking different routes now because I don't like this way of drawing. I don't think it's a beautiful drawing, so I'm gonna go left today.
Nice. I think it's really cool how, like, in that one kind of simple exercise or idea, it all comes together. Like your kind of artistic or aesthetic things. I don't like this line to draw or whatever. And the way that you are in this city with your body moving around and kind of mapping that, and how it also changes the way you look at how you're moving through the city. So it also evokes some kind of, how do you say it, awareness about how you are moving in both an aesthetic as a kind of bodily knowledge way.
Yeah, and your way of looking while you are moving, because sometimes I was on the bicycle and I zoomed out and I saw myself biking through Rotterdam on the map.
Cool.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's also something I'm working on now. Because, a few weeks ago, I for a project on school, I had to do a daily performance to one audience, like just one person, daily performance, a week long.
Wow.
So I started to give my parents a performance kind of update on my life every day.
Ooh.
So I started to, how can I bring my day as a performance to my parents? Because I don't see them a lot because I live in Belgium now. And I wanted to give them updates, but I also wanted to take a different look at my days. So since I'm started doing that, I really am watching my day differently.
Okay.
So all the things I see, I'm like, ooh, how could I use this? Or what does this say to me? Or how...
Yeah.
So, the people around me are all of a sudden like performers in my performance. Or
Nice.
or the lectures I'm getting are like, oh, how can I use this? Or is this an interesting sentence maybe?
Yeah. So it's kind of raising awareness about how you did things and also kind of shapes the way you are going to do things. It's kind of an exchange between them. Okay.
Like a dialogue. Yeah, really.
Yeah, dialogue. Yeah. Okay. Cool. And you said you are a very physical maker. You work a lot with or from the body. Did you also do it in a performance for your parents? Your daily updates?
I tried, but it was really hard because it was on WhatsApp. I created a WhatsApp group with them and I said, okay, every day between 9 and 10 in the evening, I will send you a performative update about my life.
Okay.
So it wasn't really a live connection.
Okay.
But I did make like a video.
Okay.
Twice, or I think, But I always find it hard to be physical when there's distance. So I don't know if a video is really physical because it's just translated to your phone.
And can you explain what's difficult about the distance?
Well, when I see a video on my phone, it's really a different way of looking at something as when I see a performer right in front of me, like live.
Can you describe how that is different? What is happening with you when you see a live performer versus an online?
Well, when I see a live performer, I automatically connect it faster to my own body. So I not only look at the performer, but I feel with the performer. And well, sometimes that happens when I look at my phone as well, but I have to try harder to make that connection. But it's really something I want to like spend more time on thinking about it, and also trying to get the video as interesting and as physical as the real life performance. Because when you just make performances and you can just feel it when it's happening, it's a really hard form of art. because I want to be able to document and to let everyone see it, and not just the ones who were there at the right time, at the right moment.
Yeah. There's this schooler. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. I'll look it up and edit it in later. Peggy Phelan, and she says that performance cannot be documented, and that it only exists in the moment. And as soon as you document it, I mean, you can do it, but then it becomes something else.
Yeah.
And the only way in which it can exist is in the now and in the direct connection to the audience.
Disappearance is another key concept here. And the feminist performance arts and theorist Peggy Phelan has a quite radical, or not radical, but kind of a clear meaning about what disappearance is and how important that is for performance art. She says that performance only life is in the present. Performance cannot be saved, recorded, documented, or otherwise participate in the circulation of representation of representations. Once it does so, it becomes something other than performance. To the degree that performance attempts to enter the economy of reproduction, it betrays and lessens the promise of its own ontology. Performance being becomes itself through disappearance. And what she's approaching here is the fact that, let's say, in the most consequent way, you shouldn't document. And she is here advocating for that performance art in its nature is supposed to just disappear. You can be an eyewitness, you can remember what was happening, but the actual action is not supposed to be documented. And actually she has later on said that it's not that you cannot at all document your performances. This is not actually what she is getting at here, even though that's always what this quote has been put into. But it's more the fact that the documentation, for example, the photograph or the video of a performance, cannot replace the actual action, and it shouldn't then go into become a commodity, becoming into to representation and into circulation, which means, let's say, ending up in a museum as being the artwork, because then it becomes something else. Then it's not the performance anymore. Then it's a video. So this is a kind of a discussion that I think is quite relevant today, maybe even more than it was at that time, because now documentation is more widespread in many ways. Also, that the audience also documents today, because everyone has a phone, everyone has a camera, everyone has something they record with or take photos with. So there is a way bigger engagement with actual representation today than there was in the 90s, where she said this quote.
What do you think about it?
Well, I really get it.
In relation to work. Yeah.
I really get what she says, and I think she's right about that. It becomes something else.
Yeah.
And what I think is that I want to make that something else just as interesting.
Ah, okay.
Well, yeah, I'm curious if that's possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how.
Yeah.
And is it then the same performance, or is it then another performance?
Yeah, or another artwork.
Another artwork.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know about it yet. I just started studying here performance.
And did you already try things also connected to this documentation of the performance? Because you said I'm thinking about it, I'm trying things.
Yeah, well, the project with my parents was kind of a first try.
Okay.
Because I really wanted to do it through WhatsApp, because then it would automatically be documented and also automatically be open for the people who can look into my WhatsApp.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if people are doing that, but I think it's possible. I don't think privacy is that amazing with WhatsApp. So maybe, someone from WhatsApp also saw my performative updates to my parents.
Okay, nice. And you were thinking about this. You were aware that it was a possibility.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and I like that.
For this moment, think of your own archive as a map. Go to a place nearby where you've never been before and listen to the next part of the podcast there. I was thinking about what you said, that you want to document your performance in a way that is as interesting as the performance itself.
Yeah.
And then I thought about your step in the process for the Rotterdam project. What's the title again? Because I keep calling it the Rotterdam project.
It's Prent V.
Prent V.
I think, yeah.
In Prent V, when you did the mapping of your route to Rotterdam, and where it was kind of this documenting process that also that did two things, like made you look back at what you did and also kind of shaped the way you were going to walk through it. So I was thinking of maybe using that as kind of a model for documentation, that it is some kind of form that always does two things, like make you look back at what happened, but also shape the way you are doing that exact same thing in the now or in the future.
Yeah. So, that's interesting, because then documenting not becomes something that's solid.
Yeah.
Then it becomes something that can move as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So not only the performer moves, but also the documenting of the performer moves with it. Yeah, that's something interesting. I had a teacher who said, you can't make a work without being in dialogue with the work. You can't think of something and then just make it. You have to always be in dialogue with your own work. But maybe you have to always be in dialogue with the documenting of your own work as well. Yeah.
And maybe you have to make your work and documentation go into dialogue with each other as well.
Ooh,
that they can influence each other and become something that's not solid, but kind of ever-changing.
Yeah, and not only in dialogue with me, but also with the audience. Documenting can also be in dialogue with the audience. Yeah.
The biography as a living history. If possible, please go to or near your childhood home and listen to the next part there. And what place has the body in this? Because I really like this kind of network that's kind of coming up now, where everything is in dialogue with everything in this kind of ever-changing blob of like information and experience. Kind of rhizomatic web. And then I think for me that automatically goes to some kind of philosophical, almost flying away kind of energy. And then I think, what could the body, what kind of role could the body have in that dialogue process? Yeah,
and then I immediately think it's not only the body of the performer, but also the body of everyone who comes in this dialogue. And maybe the documentation also has a body as well. Maybe we should think of that as a body. So as I was saying before, that I really like to see a performance that has a dialogue with my body. So not only seeing it and thinking about it, but also kind of feeling it, or just my body being activated. Maybe that's something that if you see the documentation of your work as a body, that it already becomes more of a movement than just a solid thing.
Yeah, and then the documentation can also more easily respond to the other bodies in the space.
Yeah,
I think if it's a body itself, then it's not like something that cannot act itself, it's not, but it's something that might have agency or a say in all this.
Yeah. Oh wow, the view of documentation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and maybe also what you were saying, that when it becomes this like rhizomatic thing, that it can like fly away a little. Maybe it being a body makes it more grounded as well.
Yeah, and in direct connection to the now and to what happens. Yeah. For the next part, go to the place where you last experienced an intense emotion.
I really haven't thought about it that much as I'm doing now, but I really like to continue doing that.
Yeah, I think it's really important that we, as I said in the beginning, that we think about how we leave certain traces, and how we that also includes how we document things. Also for the people that weren't there, I think sometimes the art space or the space where the performance or whatever happens is responsible for documentation, but sometimes the artist is responsible for the documentation. So then I think we can do a lot with that. We can decide how we want it to be remembered in a certain way, how it goes into the history books to be a bit dramatic. But we can have, I think, a lot of influence on this kind of knowledge that we put in the archive that way. Yeah. And that kind of decides what happened, and thereby what can happen in the future, in this kind of dialogue that we talked about before. So I think thinking about your documentation in an ethical way as well as in an aesthetic way can really do some very interesting things, like artistically and politically. Yeah, I think so too. And maybe also taking your audience in consideration of the documentation as well. Yeah. Because when I think back of how I documented what I did, it's always from my perspective and from what I wanted it to be as well. Yeah. So I pick the photos that I find beautiful or that I find representing for what I wanted to make. Yeah. And I don't pick the photos that the audience find interesting or representable for how they experienced it. Or that they made, maybe.
Or that they made it, yeah.
With their cell phone.
Yeah. So that's a thing that I want to do now, I think.
Yeah, it's very nice that you mention it. That also the documentation shouldn't be like from the one who, or just from the one who invented the whole thing and who has a certain image of what it should be, but that it should be more horizontal in that way. And that more people should be engaged or made responsible in how are we going to remember this? How are other people going to remember this?
Because you can just see it from one perspective. That would be... Yeah, then why should you have an audience? Just for that moment.
Do you think an audience is also there to bring multiple perspectives to the table?
Yeah, I really think so. Because most of the times when I make something, I really don't know what I want to say with it, but I just want to bring something up. And I'm really curious what everyone who sees it wants to say about it. Yeah. So it's not about me and my opinion, but about me thinking about something and wants to know how everyone else thinks about it. Yeah. So in that way, it's really important what the audience, thinks or, what he goes through. Yeah.
And then do you kind of collect it afterwards? All the experiences and the thoughts and the...
Well, until now, I've only collected it with my mind, just listening to everyone. And I haven't really been writing it down or documenting it. So that's interesting. That I think it's important, but I don't really... Well, I haven't really acted like it. So that's something I would like to do from now on, I think.
Yeah, maybe it's the next
next step.
Yeah. Nice. So then it's kind of all right, so to summarize, it's like a performance that is as physical as possible. If it's through video or in live performance, you are looking for the physicality and the direct connection that comes with it. And there's this constant dialogue between you and the work, between the work and the audience, between you and the audience. And you can kind of see the work and the documentation of it as a body as well. Yeah. So that the communication and the dialogue is not only happening inside your mind or in your head, but it's like a full body
physical
exchange. Kind of physical exchange. And in the documentation of this event or this physical performance, it should be very horizontal. So there should be more people who have a say in how it will be remembered, and it should be physical in some way, in dialogue with the performance. Exactly. Is there anything you would like to add to?
No, I think this is really it.
Okay.
And I'm really looking forward on applying all of this to my work.
Nice. I would love to hear about it if you have tried something out or did
I'll let you know.
Did an experiment in this kind of unexplored territory.
Yeah, okay. I'm really curious about how making this how to make it visible. Or how to make it like real. Yeah. How to get these thoughts into a being.
Yeah, me too. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
For the next part, go to a public place where you go to a lot. See if you notice anything there you haven't noticed before.
As mediators, we are interested in the communicative potential of an art piece and how the passive one-way communication often used in art can be transformed into an active dialogue between audience and artist. Therefore, during the evening, the audience is invited to create alternative forms of documentation, not only sharing a common ground for experimentation, but also highlighting the potential of the documentation as material in itself that can be reinterpreted and transformed into something.
Most important to me in our conversation was the dialogue of everything with everything. I think this is a very important tool to include more perspectives in our documentation and into the archive, and thereby into our present and future. A term Anna used for this dialogue of everything with everything was rhizome, or rhizome, a term coined by Gilles Deleuze and Felix Guattari. In my mind, a rhizome looks like a network of spores connecting different ideas, concepts, times, places and entities. It is not linear or built on hierarchy. Instead, it values everything, and especially the connections between everything. For me, this is about the human and the non-human, abstract ideas and systems, objects and subjects. This, and the meaning of this for the archive, is also something I will explore in the next chapter with artistic director of TG Signum, Vonge Vrieling. Thanks for listening to the second chapter of Eventually I'd Have to Disappear, the podcast on the traces we leave behind as artists and how to work with them ethically, philosophically, artistically. Please tune in next time. Bye!